Let's call this meeting to order, 1 o'clock on April the 19th. Just want to inform you that this meeting is a public meeting and is being recorded. So I'll call the meeting to order and we'll open the meeting. I'll call on Lisa. The mayor had called this special meeting. So you can take it away, Lisa. But before that, I'd like to introduce Sherry Karn from the RCMP. Thanks for joining us today, Sherry. You're on mute. There you go.
Thanks for having me. I'm here on behalf of Sergeant Wasinowich this afternoon.
Thank you. And we also have Chris McIsaac with us. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hi, Chris.
And of course, Michelle. So on that note, take it away, Lisa.
Great. Well, thank you, Chair Santori, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this meeting today, which is a extra meeting for City Council and staff to be involved with. I want to acknowledge that this is a very challenging time for our community. We've just passed the first year of COVID, and now we have an escalating housing, mental health, opioid crisis happening in our midst. The result in what we're seeing is that our vulnerable citizens are having an increased presence in our community. This looks like many things, including but not limited to vagrancy, public urination, defecation, tents around the city, garbage, weapons, etc. There's an increased level of discomfort with our citizens and our businesses, and a decreased feeling of safety in our city. This situation has been steadily increasing, but the past week seems to really have been the worst for many weeks. We've had increasing calls and emails to City Hall with complaints. And to the public, please know that we share your concerns and we care deeply about the homelessness situation in our community and the safety of all our citizens. There are multiple agencies working together in this fight, and I'm just going to list a few in the main issues that they take care of. And this is not an exclusive list or an inclusive list of everything that is everyone is doing. It's just broad terms. So we have interior health. Interior health generally takes care of the health, mental health, harm reduction, mental health support, acute and community health care, and they also do wellness checks for vulnerable populations in conjunction with Anchors and the Selkirk students. Career Development Services is our point organization for housing support. This is currently our shelter. This is the Getting to Home program, and the Getting to Home program helps people precariously housed. They hand out tents, sleeping bags, food, hygiene products, and provide services and clothes to our vulnerable population. They also provide wellness checks. The RCMP is generally focused on community safety, keeping the peace, enforcement, and crime, but they are now being pulled increasingly more so into mental health situations. They collaborate with the city, with bylaw, with CDS to enforce and de-escalate situations. The federal and provincial governments also have a role. They are the major funders of initiatives and programs, including all three organizations above, and including issues surrounding our homeless population. But our City of Trail also has a role. Our role is to protect the municipal lands and park spaces. We deal with community concerns. Our public works attends to the cleanliness of the city. Our bylaw enforcement also help as well. Right now, they're doing 2 visits a day, 2 visits twice per day in the alley outside CDS and the shelter. The city admin staff provide valuable admin support to council. The city advocates and lobbies for improved local services and supports. We fund security patrols through the RCMP and through a private company. We have 2 committees, the Task Force and Protective Services, which liaise with Interior Health, CDS, the RCMP, and the community on matters relating to community safety, including that of the homeless and vulnerable citizens. I just want to acknowledge again that this situation is trying on everyone, and many people have just had enough and they feel hopeless. And much of what needs to occur to manage this issue is outside of the city's scope and responsibility. It is, in fact, the responsibility of the provincial and federal governments who can provide substantial funding and programming to help us. But with that said, the city still does have a role. And so today's meeting is to call us all together, along with public works staff, our admin staff, and the RCMP, to talk this through and try to gain consensus on an action plan that we can move forward with to try to de-escalate and manage this situation. This weekend, I sent out a draft document to all of council and staff, and it's just a list of potential opportunities for us to action or consider actioning. They include advocacy, installation of porta potties and hygiene stations, grant opportunities, a focus on the alley behind CDS where the shelter is, increased security patrols, committee work, and community planning. Again, it in no way is an inclusive list. It was intended to just get some things down on paper that had been discussed over the past months and weeks. And with that, to start and facilitate a discussion for us, for council, with the help of the RCMP and city staff, to start making some decisions on how we can move forward. So with that, again, I just want to thank everyone for attending today's meeting. And Chair Santori, I would like to turn the floor back over to you to commence the discussion on the items listed and any other items that we would like to table for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to just open the floor to council to either to comment or to provide any suggestions or comment on some of the items that Lisa identified, which came from, I'm assuming, a variety of suggestions from a variety of groups and individuals. And it's basically a consolidation of those. So you may want to add to those, endorse those. We're open to motions. We've got Sherry from the RCMP. She's here to answer any questions you have with respect to policing. And if the if it occurs whereby we need Chris to comment on what his department can and cannot do in terms of some of the suggestions that councillors may bring forward, he can comment on that. So without further ado, let's open the floor and let's do our best to try and come up with an action plan, as Lisa indicated, to minimize the impact of what the opioid crisis and mental illness is having on our community. So on that note, who would like to start? Carol. Thanks, Carol. You're muted. Carol, you're muted. You're muted still.
Am I unmuted?
Now you're okay.
Yeah. Now you're okay.
My machine kept saying I was unmuted. Okay, sorry. So one of the things that I have been looking at, first of all, are the stats that are available as the cost per vulnerable person in society. And without support and different agencies working in the manner in which they're able to do so, it's costing us about $100,000 a year in taxes to support these people. Once you're able to get a lot of support agencies working and supportive housing, safe injection sites, the list goes on, it drops to about $40,000. So we know that we've been looking at trying to get supportive housing, and that is reliant upon the BC government. But in our list, we have indicated safe injection sites. And I think that's one of the first and most important things we can do for a few reasons. It's going to allow people to know that what they're injecting in or what they're using is going to be safe and protected. And I understand that in safe injection sites, if they're managed appropriately, that they have the option to have their drugs tested to make sure that they're safe. The second thing is, once you have people using safe injection sites, and you can continue to allow that to happen and increase it by maybe more than one site, you're going to see less syringes and needles left out in the community, which I think is going to affect this overall safety of all of us. My second thing is, and I don't see on here, and I know this may not be the easiest to implement, but it might be an option in terms of not leaving these people just to roam the street all day. If we had more or less a house, a clubhouse, or whatever you want to name it, for them to collectively meet during the day. Now, I know that's something we have to approach very carefully because of all the COVID regulations, but at least they did maybe have a place to go during the day where they could collectively gather and not just be hanging out on the street. So they feel like they have a bit of a home. And of course, the third thing that I'm supporting is supportive housing. So I'll turn it over to somebody else now, Sandy.
Thank you, Carol. Robert, Colleen, Eleanor, Paul.
I'll go next. I
Okay.
just want some questions answered to the RCMP member. How many times a day does your group go down and check the alleyway?
Obviously, it depends on our call volume for the day and what else we're being torn back and forth with other calls on. But there is no mandate at our office at this point stating how regularly we are to go down. I do know that the majority. I'm been at the trail detachment since 2012. I'm a frontline police officer, so I've been on the road for the last 9 years here in town. So when you call 911, I'm the officer that attends. So I'm on the ground with the members, and we try to attend down to the alley. I can speak for myself and the team that I work with. We try to make our way down there 3 to 4 times a day. Again, that all depends on what call volume is coming in and where it's pulling us to, whether it's to Fruitvale or to Rossland or the different areas. But on regular, we try to make it down there 3 to 4 times a day.
And how many tents, do you know how many tents there are there in the alleyway?
This morning, I did not attend. I had other meetings to attend to, so I am uncertain what they came upon this morning. But I know last week when I attended the 3 of the 5 days that I was able to make it down there, we had 2 one day, 3 another day. And then the next morning, it was after we went down and had bylaw join us. So there was 4 constables, myself and 3 others. We contacted bylaw from the city who came down with the truck, and we physically removed probably half of the property in the alley. And so that would have been last Tuesday morning at about 10 o'clock. We went down and cleaned up multiple carts full of belongings, had tents taken down. We had brought out brooms, had them encouraged to assist us in the cleanup and sweep up and clean up any debris, including any needles that were present in the alley that morning. I know that this morning, the members, I know there was 2 that did a foot patrol down there this morning as well. And they stated that they didn't have anything to report to me at that point.
Thank you, Sherry. Any other council members? Paul? You're on mute, Paul.
Happily talking away. Sorry about that. Question for Constable Karn. When you think about listing this with priorities, where do you sort of see, where does it sort of fall in priorities? Obviously, there's other calls that you get that are a higher priority than this. How often does that happen where other calls are taking priority over calls to help downtown in the downtown area?
The majority of our call volume is to the downtown trail area right now, especially with the warmer weather. The shelter, a lot of the individuals that use the shelter aren't sleeping inside anymore. They're sleeping outside because the weather has warmed up. So definitely our call volume to the downtown core area has definitely increased over the warmer weather. So the last month and a half, they are priority calls when they come in. Unfortunately, people have become a little bit more tolerant and don't call the everyday little things in anymore. And therefore, we're not always as up to knowing exactly all the littler things that are happening. We're getting called much more for the much more grander moments of this community participating in the community, like in the downtown area. Over the last week, 2 weeks, we've been called a lot more for a lot more mental health issues in the downtown area, pertaining to the alley and the shelter area. And when those calls come in, we do make them a priority and attend.
Our priority. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thanks.
One of the reasons why we do make it a priority is if one incident takes place, the likelihood is there's going to be a continuation because they're either in a mental health struggle at the moment, or there is use of opiates or some kind of substance. So if we don't deal with it in the first instance, we get usually 4 or 5 or 6 calls right afterwards. So it's easiest to attend, work with it the first time we get the call, as long as we're available at that moment and head down. So we do take it as a number one priority.
Colleen, go ahead.
Thank you, Sandy. I guess for me, what's important for me to get out of this meeting today is basically setting some priorities. We know what the complaints are. We've heard them several times over and over again about the feces downtown, the garbage downtown, the smell of the alleys, you know. I think we can be thankful that, and whether we're just not hearing about it or hopefully it's not happening, I'd like to say that theft is down, like small theft is down. We're not getting that many records of it or notifications of it. We're not seeing it on Facebook that bikes are being stolen or different things are being stolen. So I think that's a good thing. For me today, I think I would like to see us look at the possibility of getting porta potties downtown. I would like to see the idea of lighting up the alleyways. If we could find a way to do that, I think that's a positive move, not only for our businesses, but for our citizens who don't feel safe walking downtown at this time during the day and even at nighttime. The other day I drove down and it was quite sad to see that there was garbage at every end of the street, not just in that alley, but I don't know if bears are dragging it now or what, but it seems like garbage was in different areas that you're not used to seeing it. And what would be the benefit of installing cameras? Because I think we know the people that are accessing these alleys, and maybe this is something that Sherry could comment on. Would it be beneficial to have cameras in the alleys? Is it just to see what the homeless people are doing down there? Is it for this, for our people to feel safe that what they're not doing? I guess you kind of got to look at that too. So do we increase our garbage pickup? I think it's a great idea if Chris's team can, wash that alley out on a regular basis. So it doesn't look and smell like, a place where people are in there getting comfortable in their environments, if I'm saying that correctly. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody, any of the homeless people, or even the people that are working down there at this time. It's, how you say it and how you say it properly and without judgment changes very quickly. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I just really hope that we can come to some, maybe 3 or 4 really good ideas and follow through with that. And then something else is going to come up and we need to look at that. A safe injection site, it's easy for us to ask about or to say it's a good idea. But I did go to the redone information booth on last week, and I went and talked to them and I asked them about it, and it's a good idea. It definitely will save lives. It'll stop people from overdosing, but can we man it properly? Can we have the right people there? And that's a big thing that I think we're lacking right now, is a lot of support and all these different avenues or different ideas that we're looking at. We don't have the mental support out there. Our province, nobody is able to get that support available because it's so overwhelming right now. We don't even have enough support to teach these people how to fit back into society once they go through detox. You know, it's such a big, and Lisa said it, this is such a big, oh, sorry, that's my phone. This is such a big issue that it has so many different layers. So I think we have to look at our priorities first. And that would be what the citizens are telling us. And I hope I didn't say too much, but I do have more, but I'll let other people speak.
No, you can keep going if you want, Colleen.
Okay, well, you know, under what can the city do, the list that was given to us, you know, I wanted to say that the businesses have been so good trying to support the city and even actually supporting the homeless people. They give food, they, you know, have donated blankets and, you know, different things. And so these people put graffiti on their walls on the outside of their buildings. And, you know, we have to ask the businesses to, you know, please clean that up. I think that, you know, maybe this is something the city could look at doing or change the bylaw or have another good look at that bylaw and see how we can put it into effect in a different way. And I don't know what that's like. I'm just, you know, looking like I'm just throwing it out there. Last summer, we did increase the security walks and we did increase the RCMP visibly down in that area. I think it really, really helped. I really did. I think people knew that they were going to be coming along and it's changed their, you know, what they were used to doing down there. I mean, maybe they moved it to a different place, but they were moving it around. And somebody suggested something about giving out tents. Well, I did have a look at that because of what Penticton was doing and what just happened in, was it Peachland or is that Penticton where the big peaches and they went and set up a tent by the Chamber of Commerce building. And so I went and I thought, well, you know, I looked into it and in 2015, the BC Supreme Court ruled that municipalities aren't allowed to ban camping overnight. If there's not enough shelter space for them, if there's no beds available, then we can't ban it from it happening in our community. But if we can't have it in, you know, if we can't have tents in one area, we have to allow for it in another area. Does that make sense? Like if we say, okay, we're not having tents, you can't tent in this back alley, then we have to provide them with another area that they can be allowed to tent in. And it can only be overnight. And they, you know, we set the time that it has to be moved. Usually they can go and stay overnight from dawn or dusk to dawn, but they have to be up by 7 and moving on. But then again, that doesn't fix the problem. It just moves it from this place to that place, right? So I think if we're going to look at tenting or, you know, allowing a certain area for that, we have to be really, really careful because, you know, now we have porta potties down there. And if we're doing it right, we have to have storage areas for the people so their stuff doesn't get stolen. And it's, you know, during the day where they're out, you know, searching for food and whatever they need to get them through the day. So that's another thing I looked at. And, you know, this is a big decision for council to make. And I'm glad where we are today because I can see is, you know, making some really good decisions here and moving forward with them. So that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Colleen. Any other council members? Carol?
I'll just add to Sandy. I had also met with Redone and basically got the same information that Colleen did in terms of the injection site. I've also been in contact with Medicine Hat. I don't know if everybody realizes that they've been one of the success stories across Canada in terms of managing their homelessness. One of the, she's not a counselor. I think she's an appointed city official that has been managing this housing issue. She and I have been playing telephone tag since last Friday. But I was able to speak to another worker at Medicine Hat. And as we know, supportive housing is the biggest answer to the solution. And that's what they move forward on very, very quickly. My questions to them, though, are where was the financing from? And the city worker was able to tell me that she thought it was a 3-phase. There were 3 different agencies or government sources that were funding the supportive housing. So I contacted her again this morning, the assigned person on the housing issue, and I'm still waiting to hear back from her. So once I get more information on that, I'm willing to email council and let them know what all the successes were. The city worker that I did speak to, she indicated that they haven't eradicated totally homelessness in their city. They still have it, but it's a huge improvement with the supportive housing in comparison to what they had. Keeping in mind that there are some people that just want to be on their own. They don't want to be in a supportive housing unit or an apartment. They would prefer to be on the street. Thanks, Councillor Santori.
Thank you. Any other council members?
Not a council member, but I wanted to address some of the topics brought up from Colleen. There was a lot of things you stated, Colleen, that I hopefully can answer. So last week when I attended and I spoke with Mayor Payson and also with Mr. Santori, and I kind of gave a viewpoint from the RCMP, what we would suggest really helps to diminish crime or loitering in the alley specifically, which I think would help to address some of the other issues that are taking place there. Some of the suggestions I made were absolutely increased lighting is the #1 priority. The two biggest things with reducing crime in an area is police presence and lighting. So the more lighting, the better, to be honest with you, especially for at nighttime. Cameras you mentioned as well, Colleen, which was absolutely a lot of our suspected drug activity and exchanges for monies are happening in that alley. They won't happen in that alley if there's cameras present. So it's going to help to adjust. It will, of course, drug deals are still going to happen, but they're going to happen in different areas from where that concentration is right now. So I do think lights and cameras are a really great idea. I also think, and these are some suggestions that I had spoken about last week, is temporarily, even if it's for the next few weeks, the next few months, is to remove the dumpsters from that alley. And if that means having to adjust the garbage cleanup over the next little while for the retail stores, then that might be something that might need to be looked at. And the reason why I suggest this is because the dumpsters are used, they're easy to hide behind, they're easy to hide. They're also protecting a lot of the people who are choosing to sleep in the alley from the elements. So whether it's the rain or the wind, and it just creates that open tunnel area where it will feel safer to walk through. You're not worrying about somebody stepping from behind the dumpster at you. So that's going to increase, I guarantee you, police patrols at nighttime as well. And I think that will be a really big game changer for that specific alley. I also had suggested doing the cleanup, having the city come down and wash the walls specifically because of the smells and the odors that are there. Unfortunately, just lingers. And it's not only just the urine and the defecation, it's the smell of the drugs that I know are entering inside the businesses. To give them that fresh, clean start, I think would be really beneficial. And I also addressed last week the idea of taking back the alley by painting it, like getting rid of the graffiti, getting rid of all of that. I think, and then this is something that may not be common knowledge there, but the reason why that they're all amalgamating there isn't just because of the shelter for the night sleeping, because I've actually spoken to the shelter multiple times, and most nights, not all the beds are filled. And they're not filled because they get to choose to stay, they're choosing to stay out on the streets because they have the freedom to come and go, where at the shelter, the doors are locked at a certain hour. But the reason why they all seem to be kind of grouping in that area is because they're given 3 meals a day there. They're given breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So the shelter can sleep 8, and then it feeds up to 20 people a day. So they're going there because they're getting the access to the food. They're getting access to using a washroom. They're getting access, I think it's once or twice a week that they get to have showers there. So it's the easy place for them to group. and meet together. But I do think having cameras there where they can be monitored will decrease the likelihood that they're just going to linger versus maybe, and this is something maybe we can set up with the shelter, that they have a timeline, a schedule. I can shower on Tuesday morning between 10 and 11. I got to be there between 10 and 11 versus it being like a free for all. And instead of it being kind of on a first come, first served basis, it might be something that may help to not have people just lingering around hoping to have the next shower or use the washroom the next time. It might be something that we can partnership with the shelter to try to get a little bit more of a schedule going so that maybe not everybody is just there lingering all at the same time. Something else that was said, I know that a lot of the, like I said at the beginning, you know, I really think a joint force between RCMP and bylaw going through, I think will help to allow the bylaw officers to feel more empowered and feel protected while they're going down there and trying to enforce these rules. So if they're planning on going down, I think that it's not a bad idea to say, we're heading to the alley. Can you please send a member 2 or 3 to come down and patrol with us? It may, and I think it'll also give some more credibility to the bylaw officers that they have the authority they do within that community, and with specifically that alley is where I know we're dealing with a lot of struggles with. Now, something else, I believe it was yourself, Colleen, that mentioned, like, or it may have been somebody else who spoke with regards to crime being down. Our petty theft crime from people's backyards and homes and break-and-enters, all of those have reduced. And that is because they're not needing the money for food, because now the food is being provided. So we are seeing a decrease in the petty thefts and the small break-and-enters to people's yards. Those stats have decreased. And I do chalk it up mostly to the fact that they are receiving 3 meals a day. I'm not sure if I didn't answer. I think I tried to cover everybody's questions as I was writing down. I think I've got them all, but if you have any other questions, I'll do my best to answer.
Andy,
Robert, go ahead.
Chris McIsaac, what do you suggest, Chris? You know, you're on the front line there. I just like to get your opinion.
Well, I had discussed the possibility to send the flusher and sweeper down there on a daily basis just to try and help with the odor control in the alley. Street lighting or increased lighting in an alley would be complicated. So the city, you know, back in the day there's no street lighting circuit in the alleys. So there's actually the major power corridor runs through that alley, but no small service drops off of that. So it would be a complicated, expensive venture if the city was going to wade into providing lighting in the alley. And the same issue would occur with the security cameras. I think that lighting and cameras are a good idea, but again, we have power issues in the alley where we would be dealing with business owners to provide power and solutions for cameras. And I think even increase lighting if something was to happen quickly in that regard. Street lighting or alley lighting on a municipal level would be something that would have to be looked into more. Putting in a alley lighting grid would be a costly venture, and I would have to do some research on that. With respect to the graffiti management in the alley, you know, we could wash down the walls while we're down there flushing the alley. That would, of course, be an increase in service over what we're providing now. But we have the equipment and manpower available, so I think we could manage that. Right now, just so you're aware, we do downtown garbage can emptying twice weekly. So Green for Life, the new Alpine, have volunteered to do 1 extra pickup a week. So we pay for 1 pickup a week and they do another weekly pickup on their own. So they're emptying all the garbage cans that are on the streetlight posts and the garbage cans that are in the amenity bump out areas, like specifically in front of Century 21 comes to mind there. City staff, we do, well, once weekly pickup in parks, so which is managing the garbage in Jubilee Park and Jarrow Park and stuff like that. So I don't think there was
Well, the dumpsters, that seems to be a real problem. I mean, if you take the dumpsters out, what do the people do to it, Chris? That's what I'm thinking about. I understood about the lighting and the other things. That's a high cost item. But even the dumpsters, isn't that a problem, taking the dumpsters out of the alley?
Well, I think what that was referring to was to not limit the business access to the dumpsters, but to get them out of there at night so the homeless aren't pulling all the garbage out of the dumpsters, or sorry, the disadvantaged. So they're not pulling all the garbage out of the dumpsters and they're not hiding behind it, but there would still be access for business use. So they wouldn't be putting their business garbage in the street pole mounted garbage cans. They would have access to the dumpsters. We would just have to find a solution to where we want to store those during the day, I guess.
So you have to move them every day?
Maybe we'd have to take them out of the alley in the evening and put them back in the morning after they were cleaned.
Exactly. Okay, anything else, Chris, that you think we could do that would, well, something that wouldn't cost us tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, I guess, is what I'm concerned about.
Well, I think the biggest thing we can do to support the businesses downtown would be the additional level of service for the flushing and sweeping of the alleys so that they're cleaned on a daily basis. I think that's the major concern that I'm hearing in my department. I know that Michelle and bylaws and Constable Karn and the RCMP are facing way different issues than I face. I'm always about the sanitation. We get a lot of calls for Sharps pickup. There are presently 13 Sharps containers located around town that we're aware of, and those are being managed by outside agencies, but we do the installation. So there's lots of Sharps containers. I think the porta potties would definitely help as well. But, the stuff that we can manage fairly quickly, I guess, from Public Works perspective would be porta potties and increased level of service for sanitation in the alleys.
That sounds good. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Michelle?
Chair Santori, if I could just add to that, I think what we've heard from Constable Karn is that the collaborative effort is well received. And so if we could coordinate by law enforcement efforts with the RCMP and then align that with any public works increase in service that council directs, that would provide for an integrated approach. And the dumpsters, and I think what Constable Karn was indicating was that there should be perhaps a temporary removal of the dumpsters just to break the cycle where these vulnerable folks are becoming used to having to pick up and pack up each morning. They move out and then they come back and settle in. So if those dumpsters perhaps would need to come up with some sort of creative solution, because they are arranged by the private businesses. So that's not a city function, but perhaps we could provide some sort of creative solution just for a short time period. So whether or not that's the use of the communal dumpster out at Public Works, that would require some review as to the kind of level volume that these specific businesses have in those bins.
Thanks, Michelle. Lisa?
With respect to the dumpsters, if you look about the proximity of the alley to the C.S. Williams Clinic, which is a vacant building, and part of the issue with the dumpsters is that obviously they're in the alley, so they're hidden. Would maybe an interim solution be to move the dumpsters for the major businesses that are in that alley, move them to parking spots in front of the C.S. Williams Clinic? It just makes it more visible. And just so that the businesses such as the Colander that are highly impacted, instead of going out their back door, they can go and put their garbage on the street. And maybe with it being on the street and having a couple dumpsters out there, it's less attractive for our vulnerable populations to be kind of sheltering around those dumpsters. I don't know if that's what the intention is, but I'm just thinking if there's it gets a little less busy towards that end of town, and that C.S. Williams Clinic, there's parking in front of it, but it's not an active business and it's right there. So using up a few of those spots might might help somewhat. I don't know, just opening it for discussion.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else? Go ahead, Carol.
So in terms of the garbage pickup, I think that's a pretty good idea, Mayor Payson. But Chris had mentioned that there's garbage pickup done twice a day downtown, and that is it really the Greenleaf Company does once a day, and they're going to volunteer. And so that means the city's going to do it once a day. Could we not encourage those businesses to use the regular black plastic garbage bags and place them outside each morning in time for pickup, if we know what time pickup is, and the garbage is there, it's gone. So that's maybe just another option to look at.
Chris, you got?
Maybe I misspoke there, but the garbage pickup is twice weekly.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
it's not not twice a day.
okay, so would they still be able to?
That's they only collect the garbage from the decorative garbage cans, which are mounted on the streetlight posts, or the decorative garbage cans, which are in the amenity area bump outs, like at Century 21. So they don't do curbside pickup downtown.
Okay, thank you.
Colleen, you had your hand up?
I did. I'm not sure if we're ready or not, but I wanted to make a motion to have staff to look into the ability to place lighting in the back alleys. I don't know how many alleys we want to do. If it's just that one, or, you know, even behind the Trail Times, that one too is quite busy.
If I could comment on the lighting, I'm not suggesting it might not work, but when I spoke to the principals of the Colander, they've installed a long time ago some very, very bright LED lights. And according to them, it did not deter them at all. As a matter of fact, they went as far as saying it actually made it better for them when they're dealing their drugs. They can see what they're doing. It did not help the Colander whatsoever. With the, like I said, and they installed very bright LED lights, and that's exactly where they're staying. It's not deterring them at all. Now, history may prove me wrong, but that's coming right from the owners of the Colander.
Andy?
Yes, go ahead, Robert.
Well, I'd like to have Chris set up a schedule or something on doing the washing and the cleaning of the alleys. That'd be the first thing, for example, I would see, but I'd also like to get a cost on that too, to see how exactly what it's going to cost us. So I think that's the thing that I think it's probably one of the most important things to do, is to clean up those alleys first. And it's probably at the lowest cost. And in terms of the city, I'm also concerned about cost for the city. You know, we already spend $2.5 million on RCMP, maybe 100,000 on security, and another 50,000 this summer for downtown RCMP. So we're spending a lot of money, and this may be a solution. What Chris is talking about, cleaning up the alleys and keeping the graffiti down and doing that. So I would like to see that done first. And if you want a motion on it, I'll.
Use a point of order.
Can I speak, please? So Colleen had a motion on that she was forming on the table, and I would like to discuss that and then move on. And it's not saying that Colleen's motion is more important. I think we have to deal with all of these things, but let's just try to keep this orderly so we get things taken care of. So Colleen, I would like to second your motion for staff to investigate lighting in the alleys, potential options. But I would also like to add to that, if you're willing, cameras as well. So we bundle it all in. And I think I would also like this looked at from a perspective of an infrastructure, but also discussions with the businesses that have alleys in question, to see what their uptake is and their willingness. If they don't have any lights at all installed, maybe they would be willing to install lights and cameras on their own infrastructure. So I think from a global perspective, but also having that conversation right down to the business level.
So we have a mover and a seconder, and that's to review the possibility of the installation of lights in the alley as well as cameras. And furthermore, do you want to add that to the motion, Colleen, that we communicate with the business to determine the willingness of them participating in providing power or for lighting, or for them to provide their own lighting? Something along that line? Do you want to throw that all in together, or?
Sure, I like the idea of throwing it in together. Thank you. I'll agree to that amendment.
Okay, well, and we're just going to change your motion. Okay.
It's a
Okay,
friendly amendment.
All
yeah.
right. Are there any further discussion on that motion?
Just a question, Councillor,
No.
who would be monitoring the video cameras then?
I'm not sure how they work. Chris? You,
Currently, nobody monitors them on a regular basis. We access the video footage at the RCMP's request.
So, but it would be the city that would be in control of the footage on those cameras.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
yep, go ahead, Eleanor.
This may not be the time, but is there, with all what we're just talking about with this motion, is there any idea that we have that we can move these people to another place other than in an alleyway? Is there another location we can move these people? So we don't have to go through all this expense.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I would actually like Constable Karn to speak about that, because at our meeting last week, we talked about this with respect to the ability and the limitations and kind of doing a cost benefit of what that would look like. I don't think we're going to be able to get them out of the alley permanently, particularly if that's where they're getting food, washrooms, etc. But there is the 14-day limit on Crown land and providing options for more potentially equitable win-win situations. So I'd like to turn the floor over, if I would.
Certainly. So, Trail's not unique to this homeless situation. It's not just affecting Trail right now. Every community, Grand Forks, Nelson, Castlegar, we're all being affected in this situation. Here's a difficult part with the Trail community, though, for us, is a lot of these persons of vulnerability are here receiving their post-treatment care from Interior Health. Any post-care treatment, whether they were from Caslow or Nelson or Castlegar, all treatment is deferred to the Trail Hospital and the Daily Pavilion. And then all post-care treatment is through IH here, either through the hospital directly at the Daily or through Cairo Wellness Center. So a lot of the individuals end up going for weekly or bi-weekly medication shots at either of those locations. And because they are often having to be forced to come back to the Trail area, they just relocate and they stay here because this is where their post-care treatment is. Now, like Mayor Payson stated, is that we are limited to what we can do. They are here. We need to figure out how to work with these persons of vulnerability in order to reduce the greater harm for the rest of the community. And I believe it was maybe Carol who spoke earlier who said, like, we need to find maybe a different location where they're not in the downtown core, where we're protecting the downtown core, the downtown businesses, the people who want to come into the community. I know that for a short period of time, they were being told that underneath the old bridge might be an option for them to go and stay like they did last year. And when I was speaking with Bylaw, they said if they went there, they would be forced to be moved to some degree after 14 days. So that's where Mayor Payson was speaking with regards to that, is they do have a 14-day where you're allowed to camp outside of city limits, where I'm not sure if that is actually outside of city limits or if it's still within limits. Pardon me?
It's not, it's in city limits.
So they were being encouraged to go into that location in order to create a bit of a safer environment in the downtown area. So there is some difficulty with trying to relocate in a much greater area, like sending them, say, encouraging them to go to Nelson or Castlegar, all post-care treatments here. So they're all going to return here at some point. Yeah, it is unfortunate. There is going to be a place that they're going to go. So whether they're in the alley or underneath the bridge, there's going to have to be on and unfortunately, and I take this for the least amount of effect possible, but there's going to need to be some kind of a concession to allow there to be some place for them to be for short periods of time, that they will hopefully be less inclined to stay in that downtown area.
Moving up, if I may, just on moving, for those that have moved to the old bridge, it may have partially solved the problem on our alleys, but we already had a call. As a matter of fact, Lisa was there when I received a call at that meeting from residents over by the old bridge who have small children, and they're really worried. So, and you know, if you try to move them further down towards Casino, they're not going to go there. And these people that reside in the alleys will always be in the alleys. And let's not give the public a false impression that the supportive housing is going to be dealing with the ones in the alley behind the colander. Those people do not want to and would probably not, would have issues that would be potentially harming those residents that are in supportive housing, those people that are kind of living on the edge of that knife, and they help those people that are going to fall one way or another, and that are, what's the word I'm looking for, that do have the potential for cure. I think we need to accept the fact that there are some, maybe a handful, either can't or don't want to be helped. And those are the ones that are, I hate to say it, but you know, we have maybe a dozen, maybe even less, that is holding that community, our community, hostage in the downtown core. I'm just going to say this one piece and then that's it. But I do like Lisa's idea of moving those garbage bins. At least it'll prevent something from happening in the alley. If post-care is an issue, then here's a chance for some lobbying of government to provide post-care, say at the hospital in Nelson and some in Castlegar. And we also need to continue to lobby for funds from the provincial government. It just bugs me that, you know, we're not getting any help financially from the province, yet they can spend 645 grand for one toilet in the Lower Mainland. I think all of the suggestions that were brought forward made a lot of sense. Whether they work or not, I don't know, but we need to move the ones that are behind the Bank of Montreal and the Colander, that whole strip. They've been putting up with this for well over a year. And I mean, it's not only, it's a public safety issue for them. Their employees are afraid to go outside and take out the garbage. I mean, how much can a business endure? So anyways, go ahead, Colleen.
Actually, thanks, Sandy, but Lisa is before me.
Okay, so I would like to get back to Councillor Kashoni's motion because I think we really need to focus on some tangibles that either we're going to make a decision on today or get staff to investigate. Otherwise, we're going to eat up 4 hours and not have any decisions made. So what Councillor Kashoni wanted was to discuss garbage pickup in the alley. This has also been, cleaning the alley. So this has been discussed internally with staff as well. And I think from my perspective, what's really important with this is pick up the garbage before the street cleaner comes through, because there's no use blowing garbage all over the place. So I would think we would need some investigation with staff on what does that look like to have kind of like a clean team come through before, then have Public Works team come through and hose down the alley. And I would suggest we do it every day, Monday to Friday, and potentially investigate what the cost would be to do it on the weekends as well. And then have that whole integrated approach with bylaw as well, and the RCMP and CDS working to move people along. Once the garbage is done, move people along, get the alleys flushed out.
Colleen?
Chair
Um,
Stentori, if
Oh,
I
sorry,
yeah,
Michelle.
just interject, you do have a motion on the floor. So before you go on to the hygiene or cleaning practices for the alley, there is a motion on the floor to have staff investigate the ability of placing lighting and security cameras. You haven't
you.
voted on that just yet.
Oh, I thought we voted on it.
No
No.
question.
Okay, question on the motion. All those in favor?
I
Okay, that was moved by Colleen and seconded by Lisa, right?
Mm.
Yes.
Sorry, I thought we voted on it. And I didn't know if, I didn't hear a motion from Robert. You suggested it. Are you making it a motion? to
Yeah, oh, yeah, it's a
investigate?
motion. You can
Okay.
investigate the cost first of all, but I think it should be done as soon as possible.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
I
Colleen?
will.
Any question or discussion? Paul?
The question, is it, it's for Chris, actually. Before we get on to like cleaning alleys with water, there's quite a few areas that are dug up in the back out alleys right now. Are those going to be paved over shortly? Do you know?
Those are utility cuts by outside agencies, so I will reach out to them and get a timeline on when. I noticed that myself, so I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot.
Yeah, because
I'll reach out to them and see what their paving schedule is. It should be they're normally very quick to get on them, so
Okay.
should be any time now.
Okay, any other questions on the motion?
Nope.
Lisa?
I just want to make sure, is the motion to incorporate the multiple components of it though?
Yes.
So
yes,
the
it would
costing
with
and
the bylaw.
Yeah, the integrated approach. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions on the motion?
No.
Not hearing any. All those in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Lisa?
I'd like to make a motion for Public Works to investigate once the alleys are clean, to have someone come in and paint over the graffiti.
Do we have a
Second.
seconder?
Second, Robert.
Seconded by Robert. Any discussion?
No, it's a good thing to do.
Michelle, private property?
So yes, in this case, you are providing a service to private businesses. So you just need to be very cognizant that you can't provide assistance to business. Right now, we do have a bylaw in place that does require the private property owners to do restoration. So I would say unless this restoration could be undertaken by the graffiti grannies without direct cost to the city, that we would, you'd want to, I'd say, shy away from providing that direct service to the businesses.
Could we not justify that expense though, Michelle, because it's an action that's being taken in
Yeah.
order to increase public safety? I mean, we're not doing
But
it.
I did hear Constable Karn talk about taking the alley back. So you could. I think you do just want to be careful. And I don't know the extent of the graffiti concern. If it's really targeted on one particular business, if you're, I guess, providing a benefit or a service to all of the downtown businesses, that may be a bit more amenable, but really it's hard to know without knowing like the extent of work and whether or not it is something that the graffiti grannies could manage.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Go ahead, Lisa.
Is there anything we can incorporate in that motion? If that's the case, then to have some outreach to the businesses to say that, you know, part of the ongoing cleanup effort, we are going to clean the alleys. We are going to try to engage the graffiti grannies. But if we did all that, would you be willing to repaint the side of your wall? Because this is an important aspect of kind of retaking over the alley and cleaning up, and give them the option. Maybe they'd be more than happy to apply a coat of paint over that if we did all the pre-work of cleaning and making sure the alley was safe when they chose to do that.
Mhm.
Carol?
In terms of the graffiti grannies, we have to remember, I think the majority of the gals are into their 70s or late 60s. And so depending upon the extent of graffiti on some of these buildings, and just, I was of the impression that the graffiti on the McEwen building has gone up quite high. We certainly can't expect them to be climbing ladders. It would all have to be done within arm's reach. So we'd have to have more information on, just even pictures, I guess, would help, just how serious this is before we could approach the graffiti grannies.
Mhm.
A question to Michelle or if Sherry. We're talking about safety, and now I'm a little concerned now that we're seeing our bylaw enforcement officer down there on a more regular basis, which I think is good. I'm not sure if he signed up for this, or at least not to this extent. Are they permitted to carry something that would protect them in the event that they were accosted or threatened? I think I asked Sherry the other day about something like mace, something as a last resort before the police gets there if things are to escalate. Because if this becomes a repetition where we're having to move these people along every day because of street flushing, I suspect some of them might get over antsy and frustrated that they're having to move every day, that they may overreact and maybe put our bylaw enforcement officer in some form of danger. So are they allowed to carry something to protect themselves?
By law, they cannot carry a weapon in order to protect themselves.
Mace is a weapon?
Mace is a prohibited
You
weapon.
betcha.
Yeah.
You
it's
can't protect
prohibited.
yourself anything. You can't protect yourself in Canada for any reason like that.
Even bear spray, if they were to use bear spray without,
Mhm.
there is no without. If they use bear spray, that would be considered assault with a weapon. So it's
Exactly.
actually putting the bylaw officers at quite the jeopardy by doing that. This is
Exactly.
where I really feel like that joint action needs to come from, at least, and this is where I had stated last week with yourself and Mayor Payson, is I think it's essential for the next few weeks that there be much more of a joint force of going down through. For bylaw to call and say, we're looking at going down at 10 o'clock. If members are available, can they please come? Or whatever the time may be, prior to Chris and his team going through and street sweeping. Because I guarantee you those first few weeks that he's going down, or first few days, is their first day, they're going to think it's a one-off. They're going to participate just happily and move along. Maybe not happily, but they'll be more cooperative. Once they realize this is an everyday thing, in order to deter them, there's going to be increased frustrations, and those frustrations are going to be taken out on the individuals that are performing the actual cleaning of the street. They're not the people who are going to call the city and say they're cleaning the street on me again. So I think that it's important, especially for the next few weeks, if all of a sudden we're coming down hard and fast, I do think that a joint effort needs to be seen. That if the city is going down to clean the streets the second day, third day, maybe not every day we have to attend, but I think a police presence after those first few days may be something that's going to end up having to happen. And whether you call us to come by and stand by and keep the peace, or if it's us jointly with bylaw going and encouraging the moving of the tents and the property and belongings prior to the street sweeping coming in, then that's something that should be done. And whether it's something we like coordinate ahead of time, that every day we're doing this, so we have members are aware if there's no other calls volume at that time that they attend and participate. But I think for the next few weeks, a joint direction is going to have to, just to ensure the safety of bylaw. I know that they really, really appreciated it last Tuesday when myself and the other officers were there, and they just got to stand by. They felt like we had their backs. They felt safe. They felt like they were in control of being able to perform their job in the alley. And I think it went over well with both of them, and I think it created a much safer environment, even for those that were in the alley that day. I think that there was a lot of us to direct their frustrations at versus just the bylaw officers.
Michelle, you had something you wanted to add?
I did just want to add that we would never want our bylaw enforcement officers to put themselves in a position of danger. So they would, if there was any aggressive behaviors that made them uncomfortable and they didn't have the RCMP present with them, they would leave the situation very promptly. One thing we are looking at is getting the protective vests. So they wouldn't have any weapons, but the potential for them to have protective vests. And they are presently carrying Narcan. So if they were to inadvertently come into contact with an opioid, they do have Narcan available to them. And they're acting in pairs. So we have diverted to a small extent the parking meter attendants' primary duties. So rather than being strictly on the street doing parking enforcement, he is accompanying our bylaw enforcement officer for these activities. So they're always in pairs.
A second piece of equipment, if I could, Michelle, suggest with regards to them wearing for their safety, might be something, we call them slash gloves. And they do help with, like, if you end up touching knives. I mean, if a needle would go through, like, that has to be very clear, but it might be something to look at investing in along with the protective vests.
Okay, thank you.
For jumping in there.
Lisa?
Councillor Santori, we have a open motion for the graffiti. Can we close that off?
Yeah.
Any further discussion on the graffiti motion? I'm
Nope.
losing it today.
No.
Okay, now, that was moved by Lisa, seconded by,
Moved by Robert.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Okay. Colleen? Colleen?
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to get back to that conversation that we were just having about the bylaw officers. So for me, I guess, my concern would be if the officers have had any training with dealing with the mentally or the street people, dealing with mental issues and how to approach them. I don't know if they've had that training, but Michelle, when you say that they're carrying Narcan for opioids, what does that mean? So if someone goes into overdose, they're using that?
No, if one of our bylaw enforcement officers were to inadvertently come in contact with them and with an opioid and go into some distress,
Oh,
the other would be able to administer the Narcan. They have a nasal spray.
Oh, okay.
Available.
Thank you. Okay, I thought they were giving the drugs to the street people if they were overdosing. So I
No.
don't know if they have that kind of training, but the library staff are doing that training this weekend. Actually, there's a 4-hour training available and it's unlimited participation. And if they're interested in it, they just have to get a hold of Samantha at the library and she can give them the information. It's a very good course. I believe it's 2 to 3 hours and it's Saturday morning. Saturday morning? Yeah.
I'll look into it.
Okay, thank you. Or maybe I think it's Thursday morning. This Thursday, April 22nd.
Okay.
Carol, go ahead.
I'd like to move that administration in conjunction with IH investigate the possibility of a safe injection site or sites within the city.
Lisa?
So just to provide a little bit of context, at the last supportive housing meeting that Councillor Jones and I attended, safe injection sites are the responsibility of generally a nonprofit organization with Interior Health. So the nonprofit organization like Anchors would be the organization to be taking care of and planning in a safe injection site. So that would probably fall under advocacy where we're writing a letter of inquiry for them to investigate. But I don't know if it's not solely IH's responsibility. So that letter should probably go to Anchors as well as IH as a dual notification letter.
So should Councillor Santori, should I change my motion accordingly that letter be sent?
Sure.
Okay.
Second, Robert.
Okay, I think, Michelle, you got the gist of the motion?
Yes, I do. That council will advocate to both Interior Health and Anchors and any other responsible parties to investigate a safe injection site for trail.
Okay, moved by Councillor Doby, seconded by Councillor Kashoni. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Any other comments? Lisa?
I'd like to discuss porta potties. Now, we do have a grant application that has been recently submitted with CDS where they are putting in an application through the UBCM for a funding stream for outreach workers, and included in that is porta potties. But through social housing, we have discussed the need for porta potties. Now, CDS did not feel like having porta potties outside their door is really needed because it ended up being an area where they were using it to inject narcotics or use, and there is a washroom right there. So we also discussed if our vulnerable persons are going to be moving further down the riverbank towards the old bridge, do we need to put a porta potty that direction? Sheila actually thought that the porta potty on the Union Hotel site did quite well. She just did not feel that having a porta potty in the back alley of CDS was of benefit. So I would like to make a motion that we investigate putting 2 porta potties in the city limits. Potentially one at the Union Hotel site and one down towards the old bridge. The other site that was brought forward by Public Works was potentially the Selkirk College parking lot, which is city owned, but we would need to have some discussion on that. And I would also like to ask, or the city staff to approach CDS to fund those, because I believe that they do have, Sheila indicated they would have funding for those.
Okay, we have a motion by Lisa. Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Colleen? I guess my only concern about the porta potty and encouraging people to go down by the Columbia River is we will be hearing from the residents there with children that they're going to be put in harm's way. Just so you know, it's coming.
I have another, we voted on that, right? So,
No,
no, okay.
Oh,
I have
we never
a-
voted on it.
I have a addendum to the porta potty part 2, but I'd like to close this one off.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
question.
Aye.
Oh, go ahead, Carol.
Sorry, Counselor Santori. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So we're going to end up with a total of 3. One that we presently have at the Union site, possibly one down by the college, and then one by the river. Is that what you were explaining, Mayor Payson?
I don't think we have any porta potties right now. I think they were all removed when funding through the emergency services of the regional district was stopped about 3-ish months ago.
Yep.
So we don't have any porta potties right now.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay.
So
Colleen, sorry, I thought Colleen had her hand up.
So my second part of the porta potty is that I believe, Councillor Kashoni, you can maybe correct me if I'm incorrect, that the intention kind of longer term at the bus turnaround was to have a public washroom there.
Right.
And I'm unsure of the total scope of that project, what the style is going to be like, what the cleaning is going to be like, but they just, like Councillor Santori said, did put forth a budget, the province, to do a porta potty down in Vancouver. I think it was 650,000 with all the infrastructure, but it gets cleaned every 3 minutes, which would assure that it would be cleaned and sanitized with the spray and that everyone would be able to use it. I would hate to have a public access toilet down in that corner and have it not be usable because it's not clean enough. And I would like to ask staff to write a letter to the regional district to inquire about that plan for a porta potty and to see if we need to potentially advocate for an upgrade depending on what the plan is, because I don't know who's going to go clean it, but if it continues on right now where it's free access to the public, I'm very concerned about it not being usable.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fine, sure. All that hasn't been dealt with yet. We just incorporated a toilet, a washroom into the plan, and that was approved at the committee level. But the details of it, in fact, I just discussed it with John Howes the other day, and he's actually anxious to find out some more information. Some of that will be coming forth with a meeting this month, in early May, when we meet again with BC Transit. But I do think it's important to have a washroom there. And if it needs to have an upgrade, then I do think that there's a possibility we could deal with it.
Okay, any other discussion on anything?
Was
No.
there a seconder for that motion from Mayor Payson to request that?
I thought it was part of the other motion, Lisa?
I was going to do it as two,
Okay,
but
no, do we have a seconder to Lisa's motion?
Sure.
Paul? Any discussion on the motion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Can I make a suggestion? And maybe one of the councillors, if they agree, can make this motion. I think it's important that if we could communicate with the downtown businesses, whether it be directly from City Hall or through the Chamber of Commerce, to give them an update based on the motions that were made today, to keep them informed of what the city is trying to do, and maybe also to invite them to provide any additional input or suggestions that they may have. I think it's, I know this is being aired and they have the liberty to go on and Facebook or whatever and look at it. I think we need to communicate directly with our businesses in terms of the initiatives that we're trying to take, and maybe a little bit of a background about, what the challenges are, who we're dealing with, what we can do and what we can't do. So I think that might not solve any problems, but at least it may put the business community somewhat at ease that council is actively trying to initiate some action to minimize the outcomes of mental illness and the opioid crisis.
I'll second that motion.
I didn't make the motion. I'm asking somebody from council to make
You
it.
you don't want to make it, because I'm happy to make it, but it's appropriate if you want to make it, to make that motion.
Chair
Okay,
can
I'll
make a
make-
motion.
Okay, fine, then I'll make that motion.
Mhm.
No, you-
Any seconder?
I'll second.
I'd like to also see maybe that we have something on Facebook, because most of the concern, or a lot of the concern anyways, that I'm reading are coming from those three particular group sections on the city, complaining about what's happening. So maybe just even the motions could go there, that the city is planning on doing such and such, but think about it anyways.
Well, on that note, Robert, I think I can't see why it would not be appropriate for us to issue a general press release in
Great.
terms of what we've discussed at this meeting without the specifics. Specifics, we can refer them to our Facebook page.
Yeah.
I'm sure there will be a document, Michelle, out of this that will provide an overview of our discussion that we could put on Facebook.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I would suggest that too. So along with what you're talking about, incorporate some sort of
a communication plan. How's that?
communication. Yeah, exactly.
Michelle?
Our media releases are routinely shared to our Facebook page,
Yeah.
so that will be accomplished.
Great.
So I moved it, Colleen seconded it. Any further discussion?
No,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried.
Mhm.
Okay, any other ideas, suggestions, comments? Mayor Payson?
I would like us as a municipality to really utilize that lobbying list that was created and actively start writing letters and lobbying to the agencies for increased funding, whether it's supportive housing, whether it's enhanced RCMP support, whether it's RCMP pay so that we can have pay equity to retain members, to our MLA, to request our MLA come and speak to council. There's, I think, about 8 agencies on there, and we are asking our citizens to lobby on our behalf and have provided that list to them. But I think it would be incumbent on us to also write some strategic letters on behalf of our citizens as a whole in the city to lobby.
If I can make a suggestion on that suggestion, Lisa?
Go for it.
with respect to the general population lobbying government, what we did way back in the 90s when we had the big lead issue is we did a form in the local newspaper asking government staff where people would actually just, they don't have to write the letter, they cut it out, they sign it, and they send it off to the appropriate ministry. Because having been there, the minister doesn't get to read, he won't read or she won't read every piece of mail that comes in. But if the community starts to, all engage in sending these form letters that they just clip out of the Trail Times or a PDF on Facebook where they can print it and mail it or email it to the appropriate ministries, that will get their attention more than individual letters. Just a suggestion. Colleen? You're mute.
Yeah, I know, thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, Sandy, because I myself, even when I'm going to write a letter or something, it's nice to have a template to look at. And maybe if we had some different templates for the citizens who are willing to lobby to have a look at and choose, yeah, I want to talk about supportive housing. I want to talk about a safe injection site. I want, to lobby about maybe getting better health care for the street people, or better mental illness support, or if there was different templates that they could click on and just have a look at and then send off. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, Carol?
Okay, what I was going to suggest is, I like the form idea very much. That just means clipping it out of the newspaper and putting it in the mail. So to follow up with Colleen's suggestion for the options as to what the citizen wants to see happen, could we just not have form letters available at City Hall, or the blank form on any of one of those three solutions that they might be interested in? Because there's a lot of people don't get the Trail Times anymore. And so I think to have that available in another area rather than just through the Trail Times might allow the public more opportunity.
You can do it through, say, Facebook. You can do it through Twitter. You can do it through Instagram.
Yeah,
All
whatever.
they do is they can fill out the line. The only thing, Colleen, that I would suggest is that this is just to get their attention to deal with the issues in a general way, to bring their attention to the opioid crisis and homelessness. If you start to get too specific, you could have 20 different types of letters. I think a letter that is all encompassing in terms of the issues that we're having here in Trail, that we need help in dealing with homeless and opioid. But I don't know if you want to get specific saying, I want a safe injection site, I want this, I want that. They've heard all of that in terms of what the solutions are. We're just saying, deal with it. And I don't think you want a whole bunch of letters. I think people would tend to focus on one that's general, that touches on all those things. So, but that's up to council and how they want to do it.
So could all those things not be mentioned?
Yeah, you can do,
One
like I
letter?
said, a general letter in the one form letter as opposed to specific solution letters, because then you're going to get 7 or 8 different types of form letters. I don't think it'll have the impact when it reaches a minister's office than say maybe 500, 600 or 1,000 of that one letter from a community.
I agree.
Okay. I don't know if there was a motion to do that or not.
Yep, I think I made the motion.
Okay,
Sorry, Mayor Payson, as I heard your motion, it was more for the municipality to do lobbying based on the discussion. Have you changed that?
I would like it both. So my first part of the motion is for the city to write letters to all the point agencies. And I'm happy to expand that so that we're creating form letters for our citizens to lobby and basically do a media release to let them know that they're available.
we have a seconder.
I will.
Eleanor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Any other discussions or motions or concerns? If not, I would like to make one specific motion, and that is that we invite Katrine Conroy to a public meeting to discuss with us government's plan to deal with the opioid and homelessness crisis in our region.
Second, Robert.
Any discussion?
No,
Okay.
Yeah, well, there is discussion. I mean, clearly, this is not our specific problem. We can do a lot to deal with this particular issue, but we don't have the capability. And I agree with you, Sandra. We do not have the capability to deal with this unless we are willing to commit tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And even then, I don't think we can handle it. It's more it is in the provincial realm and in the federal realm. So yes, I think she should be here anyways. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. All those in favor of the motion?
aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Move
Okay,
adjournment.
I'm not done yet.
Hold on, Robert. Go ahead, Colleen.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just had a quick question for Constable Carn. Do you think that we've
Lisa, can
touched
you
base-
take the floor for a sec? I have to, somebody at the
Yes.
door.
Yeah. Go
Do
ahead.
you
Con-
think- Sorry, thank you. Do you think there's anything that we've missed or not touched on, Sherry, that we need to today, or?
I think that the majority of the issues have been spoken about. I think Michelle summed up something I said earlier, and I had mentioned last week, is I think an important thing is because we have this group of community kind of sticking to the one kind of area, I think we need to take that area back. And I think all of the steps that have been agreed upon from the different agencies, like with CDS as well, along with Chris from the city, and cleaning that up, a joint force between the RCMP and BiLab before Chris goes in so that it's a safe environment for his employees. I think you're hitting on everything. And I think that, I think a great idea of the porta potties in the downtown area as well. I'm just not certain if, I worry about the vandalism of it as well, and using it, same thing for usage sites. I do have those concerns. The one thing I did note that I know they have in Nelson, which seems to, I don't know, I'd love to follow up with Nelson and Nelson Police Service, and that's something I certainly can do. On the corner of Baker, closer to the west end of town, they have one of those outdoor washrooms that are quite, I do believe it's one of the ones that are sanitized quite on their own, but it's quite open aired as well. So it would be something that the community could use versus the porta potty may not be as used. I worry about having to check that porta potty before members of the community actually try to use it as well. So I did hear that Robert was looking into something like that down at the further end.
Well, that's already in the plan.
Okay.
The washroom is in the plan. I guess the specifics was when Mayor Payson asked is whether or not we would consider to have that washroom upgraded to have be a self-cleaning washroom.
Mhm.
Because right now it'll be probably close to $100,000 anyways, say $80,000 to $100,000 to put a regular one in. So, and but we would discuss that with BC Transit because they are the funding authority. We only fund 20% of the total, and Trail only funds 40% of the 20% in terms of the cost.
Anyway, sorry to go back to answer your question, Colleen. I think you guys are heading all of the right spots from a policing perspective. Like I said, two biggest, minimizers of crime are police presence, enforcement presence, not even just police, but enforcement presence, and then making it as unenjoyable, habitable of a location as possible. And I think by taking out the dumpsters, even if it's just temporary, adding additional lighting, even if the cameras weren't working, put cameras up, maybe a deterrent just on its own, whether they were working or not working cameras. Things like that, I think I think you're hitting on everything.
Just want to check, do we have enough, Michelle, in the motions regarding potential temporary dumpster removal to get them away from that alley or communication with the businesses to try to work on that as well? I'm just not sure if it was caught in the No, it wasn't.
It wasn't, and I think if you're going to frame a motion, you should do it in a way in that you're requesting the adjacent businesses to voluntarily discontinue that service once staff have investigated an alternative means for them to have garbage collected or to deal with their garbage independently for a short period of time.
We're
Okay.
gonna notify the businesses in advance, right?
Well,
That
yeah,
will-
because they make the arrangements, not the city. So they're responsible for the contractual arrangements. And so they would have to voluntarily cancel that for a short period of time.
Okay,
Well, and I think it might be the investigation of, can you just easily move those dumpsters out of the alley around the corner so they're on the street, they're more lit, there's higher traffic for 2 to 3 weeks? To see if that helps and works too.
do we know how many bins are in that one stretch in that one alley? Chris, by any chance? Would there be half a dozen there?
Oh, for sure. I'm sure there's 6 or more. There's
Mhm.
quite a few bins in that alley.
You
Because
have
I'm
a
just
real
wondering-
problem. You have a real problem in front of the CS Williams Clinic. I've been going
Yeah.
down pretty well every day because what happens is if you put dumpsters in front of that CS Williams Clinic, you're going to create a little enclave in behind there. And that's
Yeah.
where they're actually sitting. And the other day there was 4 individuals in there and they had all their stuff with them. So you may have to spread them out or something, because if you just put them in front there, it'll make like a little fort for them. And it'll encourage them to go in there behind there. Go down, take a look, you'll see.
Okay, so I'm prepared to make that motion as nicely wordsmithed by staff to investigate garbage collection and potential movement of dumpsters in collaboration with the business owners.
Mhm.
You have a seconder? Paul? Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. I mean, I think a lot of these things are gonna be, let's try and see what happens. I mean, there's gonna
Yeah.
have to obviously be a lot of investigating, and Chris or somebody may come back and say, look, it was a good thought, but it's not gonna work for these reasons. And then I guess we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay, any other discussion on the issue at hand today? Carol, go ahead.
Not so much a discussion on the issue. I just have a question that perhaps Michelle can answer. Do we know how many of the public tuned in today, joined us?
At its peak, there were 4 people observing. Right now you have 3.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And it will be, of course, a recorded webinar available on our website. So people will be able to tune in following.
Okay, and are we going to put out a press release to that effect?
Yeah.
To notify the public?
It's not a media release, but anyone who subscribes to the city's news feed will receive a notice when we post the video.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay, not hearing any. Thank you very much for attending today, Sherry. We really appreciate your presence here today. And thank you, Chris, for taking time out. I know you're swamped at springtime here. And thank you to all council members for engaging in what is a very challenging and difficult situation. But I think we're confident enough to say that if we keep working together on this, that we will minimize the impact these issues are having on our community. So thank you all for engaging and bringing forth your ideas and suggestions, and go and enjoy the rest of a beautiful sunny day.
Thank you. Good day.
Aye.
Take care, guys.